The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. Today, we've got a returning guest in Michaela Juric. She is the founder and the Bitcoin Babe. It's a pleasure to have you on the show again.
Thank you very much for having me again.
No problem. Look, as you know, we're doing our Women's Week here at Trader Cobb and looking to speak to a lot more women that are in the space and trying to help the ladies understand a little bit more about the space and how they can actually become more involved. Now, you've got quite an interesting story going back quite a number of years. Do you want to sort of tell us how you got into Bitcoin in the space?
Yes, it's a very interesting story. So I guess the TLDR of it was I was going through a bit of a bad place in my life and got really depressed and actually turned to Bitcoin to use it to purchase drugs off then the Silk Road to ultimately overdose and commit suicide. Obviously that didn't come to fruition. I got the drugs and then the drugs ended up being fake. So that's that's how I'm here now. So it's literally by chance. Obviously if those drugs were real, I'd be in a different place now. But, yeah, so drugs ended up being fake. Went through a bit of, therapy, et cetera, ended up coming back online a few months later because the therapy that I was going through wasn't overly working. I was just depressed again. I was like, screw it. At least now I know where to buy my drugs from next time. Went back on because I had a few bits of Bitcoin left over from my last purchases. Logged on, and from that point, because when I originally purchased the Bitcoin, it was $50 each, and then from there it went up and it was sitting around $1,200 each. Wow. So this Bitcoin, I had like four Bitcoins left over, which was like $200, which was then obviously worth $4,800. Yeah. So as someone that was really sort of struggling with mental health issues, not working, just living day by day, Centrelink pay to Centrelink pay, to have $4,800 appear like that was crazy. So from there I was like, wow, how did that happen? So I started getting into my research. What is Bitcoin? How does it work? Why did the price go up? Yeah. Will it keep going up? Will I get richer? And then from there, just sort of got into day trading, and completely the whole depression thing just fell into the back of my mind. And here we are. Wow.
So Bitcoin saved your life.
Well, that's what they're saying, yeah. But
jeez, that's quite the story. I hadn't had the detail of it before, but well, we're glad that you failed. We're glad that you're here with us.
Thank you.
And when was that?
That was in 2013.
Right. And what was the essence behind starting Bitcoin Babe?
Well, funny story actually. So originally when I started Bitcoin Babe, I was actually going to start it as a webcam service. So back in the day, they used to have on Reddit, it was something, it was like girls would post up photos and then guys would either say yes or no, and then they'd start tipping them in Bitcoin, and then that's how you'd, make money. And so I was just like, and I've come from a adult entertainment industry background, and I was just like, oh, this could work really well. And I had a few friends that were looking to make a bit of money. I was ultimately wanted to become this like virtual pimp under the name Bitcoin Babe. It didn't end up eventuating, but I had the name sort of saved and everything and registered in all these places. Anyway, I ended up getting caught up in a Ponzi, and it was one of those ones where it was like, oh, we'll give you 1% a day if you invest this much and all that kind of stuff. So, and through there, I ended up meeting a whole bunch of people because they were mostly based in the States. And we were discussing the massive difference between purchasing, like the price difference in purchasing Bitcoin in America to Australia. Because back then you were looking at these spreads of like anywhere between 7 to 14%. Like it was crazy. Wow. So I was just like, well, how about this? You guys buy Bitcoin for me over there. I'll liquidate it on the local Bitcoins market over here, and then I'll send the money back to you. You keep buying, we'll just keep going around in circles like that. Yep. We'll make this crazy profit. It'll be fantastic. So that's how it started. So I ended up I was like, well, I've already got Bitcoin Bay registered. I might as well just run with it. So I chucked a few old modeling photos up on the Facebook page and we're like, hey, you like the look of me? Come buy some Bitcoin. So, and then that's how it kind of came about. And eventually all these people that I knew from America, they dropped off, they went and had their lives, families, whatever. And I just kept running with it, found my own suppliers, got into it more that way. And 5 years later, I'm still here.
Wow. Well, there you go. I mean, that's a way that, you brought your own, I guess, female touch to the whole thing. I mean, you've used what you've got to basically attract your clientele, and then you've delivered with a good business. That's worked well for you. So, I mean, look, I can understand the differentiation in the spreads and why that would have been profitable. How much more difficult is it these days?
Look, I mean, there's certainly a bit of spread between like the markets here and the markets overseas. But I think once you really start looking into how much it costs you to actually send that money overseas, that, and also it's a lot harder to do now that the banks have gotten on to what Bitcoin is, and they've really restricted that financial market. But nowadays it's actually pretty good. I don't think you really see anything over that 2 to 3% mark, like on a bad day, like with the Australian exchanges compared to the ones that are overseas.
Okay, so I mean, has your business had to sort of evolve to remain profitable? I mean, effectively, for those who don't know, your service is basically a brokerage, right? People come to you and go, I want to buy X, and then you go source it for the best price and you do your thing, right? Is that more or less how you work?
Yeah, pretty much. So obviously, just to make things cleaner, I have a set rate, and then whatever it costs me on the back end, then I sort of wear that cost. So it's pretty much at least that way. And that's where I think it gets a bit confusing for a lot of beginners. They come on, they see exchange books, and it's like all these different rates and everything else, and you don't actually know what you're getting half the time. So at least with using a brokerage service like mine, it's very similar to sort of OTC stuff, over the counter. The price you see is what you get. So you don't have to worry about fees, charges, different order books changing, orders not being filled. You know what you're going to get and how you're going to get it.
And here's a question. What's been your biggest order to date?
Oh gosh. Buying or selling?
Oh, either one.
Ooh, okay. Buying, I'd say around 215,000.
And was that during the peak of the boom?
Yes, it was. Oh, yeah, I know. And I remember this couple so vividly too, because they were buying the Bitcoin. They'd drawn on their mortgage to buy the Bitcoin to invest it in Oscoin. Yeah, I know. And I feel for them now. Like, I honestly don't know where they are now.
Wow.
Oh gosh, I would, feel
Education is key, people. It is always the most important thing you'll ever invest in is understanding and education. So let that be a lesson to everybody else so they don't fall into the same hole. And because you've been around for quite some time, and because you are an attractive woman, and because of the way you market yourself, how have you found the entry into this marketplace? I mean, there is a certain way you do things, and you are running a business, and that's what you're here to do. But have you come up against some pretty big hurdles in the space leading up to now?
I have, and probably I think people have a certain assumption of what sort of hurdles I might face. But I think the most interesting one, I guess, was in 2015, and this is so very early on in the space. I was trying to gain crypto stock or Bitcoin stock, so I'd have trading stock to run the business a bit better. So a friend of mine at the time ended up putting me onto BTC Lending Club, and it was pretty much like one of those peer-to-peer lending programs. And it worked great in theory, but unfortunately they ended up dying off, something about unregulatory loan sharking or something like that. In the end, it didn't work out for them, but it helped me get my business off the ground, which was great. But yeah, so obviously the whole spiel is you'd put up a loan and you'd say, I need this amount. This is what I'm going to use it for. You'd pretty much, sell yourself and say, this is what I'm going to do it, either invest or don't.
Yep.
Now, one of the biggest hurdles I faced with that was people not believing I was a real person because I was an attractive woman.
Right.
So I would go on, because apparently this website had problems in the past of these attractive women coming up, signing up, wanting, a couple of $100 here and there.
Yeah, okay.
Run off with the coin. They'd end up being some, Nigerian scammer or whatever, and run off with the Bitcoin. You never see it again. So when I had sort of very little knowledge of that. So when I came on asking for $10,000, $20,000 loans worth of Bitcoin, people were very cautious about that, which was fair enough. But I guess the attacking or the scrupulousness of the situation, I didn't expect it to go that far down the line. It got to the point where I was having bank employees who were a part of this group or community, searching me up in their own banking databases and posting up my personal information online and saying, here's where she lives. Someone go verify that she's real. And it was thankfully no one showed up.
Wow.
That was the kind of stuff I was dealing with back then. And it was just massive, I wouldn't say, I guess cyberbullying would be the way. There was just this group of 3 or 4 people that just went at it constantly. And even when I'd prove myself over and over and over again, they just kept going at it, all because I was a female. And obviously, sticks and stones, and overcame that. It launched my business, and when it was time to say goodbye, I said goodbye and said,
away you go.
Yeah, keep living in that Facebook cesspool group you got going over there. And
yeah, well, there's plenty of those. And I mean, have you seen it change as we've come through 2017's bull run into 2018 bear, and now obviously in 2019? Have you seen more women becoming involved, through your brokerage and also within the groups? And are you starting to notice an increase in participation?
In my brokerage service, yes.
Okay.
I'm seeing a lot more women come through there, mainly because, and I've said this in the past, I think women are more inclined to deal with other women because there's sort of that trust aspect there.
Yep.
But in terms of in the community as a whole, I haven't seen much of a change. And I think that's it's hard to say, because I think that's just the dynamic, and I think a lot of those sort of math, science, all those kinds of subjects, they've never really been women dominated subjects. And I know there's a massive push to get women into it, but at this point in time, I don't see the benefit of what bringing more women into the space will give. And that's something that I've sort of been really confused about and sort of battled within myself. Because when I first came into the space, I was quite young, was quite impressionable. And so I had a few female mentors who were like, oh yeah, go do these interviews with these news outlets, and, we can market you as the new face for women in Bitcoin and everything else. And I was just like, yeah, let me be on a news article, because I'd never been on one of those before. I was just I felt special. And then it was sort of after that, and I was just like, hang on a minute, why am I doing this? Why so I'm this face for women in Bitcoin that they want me to be, but why? And I didn't understand the meaning behind that. I guess I still don't really
Well, look, there's a number of things. I mean, look, from a pure logistical point of view, from my point, I mean, if we've got 50 million Bitcoin accounts right now, or crypto accounts, yeah, that's such a small penetration into the greater investment community. Now, if only 5 to 7% of those are women, we can get to 85 million by just speaking to the women in our lives. The men speaking to their wives, their daughters, their sisters, they're all that sort of stuff. If we can get more participation, we can effectively double the size of the market cap just by including or being more inclusive. I think one of the things that women do struggle with, and I do see it still in groups, is that they'll put up a photo of a very skimpily dressed woman to get attention, to then get their message across, which, if I was going into a group and there was a picture of, a man and he's, in some, I don't know, something strange like a G-string or something like that, I'd be like, oh, okay, this is a bit confronting. I'm not quite sure that I want to be involved with this. So it would put me off. So I think it's about, if we can bring more women in, we can increase the market cap. And of course, look, they're 50% of the population. Why would they not help build?
Well, one thing I've sort of been curious to know is that, you say, oh yeah, so 5 to 7% of the thing is women.
Yep.
Like those, they've been almost the same stats in the last 5 years that I've actually been in the market.
Yeah, okay.
Like they were the same. I think it was 7% they were quoting 4 years ago, which was when 4 or 5 years ago, that's when I was starting Bitcoin Babe, because I looked into that. I was like, okay, who's my target market going to be? Oh, well, 93% of the market's men. Fantastic. They're all, majority of them are going to like boobs unless they're gay. Well, so, but then I also think it really depends on where you're getting your sources from, because if you go into like Facebook and there's like a whole bunch of like women in crypto groups now. And I think if you went into those and started surveying them, well, then of course it's going to come out and say, oh yes, the market cap of women is, there's 91% of women and 7% men. Well, of course, because that's what you've exposed that survey to.
Yeah.
I reckon that it's a lot bigger. I wouldn't say it's 50-50, but I'd say it's certainly a lot bigger than 7%. I think we're just looking at in the wrong areas to get our information.
And possibly as well that, you know, a lot of, I've got a bunch in my group. Some of the best traders I've got are women.
Yeah.
And I've said that very, you know, publicly on a stage of 500 men. And I continue to say that, you know, women tend to make better traders. I've experienced it over the last 8 years of teaching people. But I think as well, you know, often I know that these women are in these groups, but they sit back a bit, they just read and they're observant. And I think that, you know, whatever floats your boat, you know, whatever makes you happy and gets you through the day. But I'd love to see more participation and more involvement, because I must admit, there is a lot of immaturity still in a lot of these groups. And let's be honest, you know, crypto is sort of run by groups. It's Facebook groups, it's Discord groups, it's Slack groups, it's Twitter and all that sort of stuff. And it is fairly male dominated in these groups, and it can come out and be quite immature and not something that we want to have out there. If we want to have a bigger market capitalization and we want to have more people coming into the space, we need some mature money. And if they come into these groups and they see these silly posts and bitching and moaning and carrying on, and I'm not saying that that's what goes on all the time, not at all. But if they do come in at that time, it's sort of like, all right, well, let's check out this funny internet money. And they come in and they go, oh, okay, yeah, this is just silly. I'm not going to get involved in this. If that wrong post is up at that wrong time, it might cost someone the opportunity of their life. You know, some extra maturity would be really, really welcome.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing as well is it's almost not okay to be wrong in these communities. It's like, as soon as you say something wrong, it's like you're hounded on with the force of a million trolls. And I think as a woman, it's probably a lot worse. Whether or not that's maybe because we're a bit more, you know, emotionally susceptible, you know, kind of thing. But it probably is a lot worse, because it's, you know, you don't say to a man like, you know, oh, you got that trading advice wrong, go back to the kitchen kind of thing.
Okay. So the same old silly sexist things creep in. But look, at the end of the day, the only way we're going to have change is by strong women making change, and strong men that believe in them being in the space and will stand up and go, hey, this is not on. This is not cool. You shouldn't do this. And collectively we can make it better. We just need the involvement. And what would you say to any woman who's sort of sitting on the sideline and considering getting into the space, whether it be to, you know, work in this space because we're short on blockchain developers, or whether it be they just want to get in and start buying some Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies?
Go to blockchain.info, and if you look up all the transactions there's nothing that says transactions made by men and transactions made by women. You can't actually tell what gender, you know, a certain person is making at the transaction of any time. So don't worry about it. Like, I just don't think it should matter what's between your legs. If you can do a job great, do it.
Couldn't agree more. I think you're spot on. And look, we'll leave it on that. I mean, you just nailed that little point. I wanted to get that one across. You said it very powerfully. Well done. And look, where do people find out more information about you if people want to get in the space, learn a bit more about what you're doing?
They can go to www.bitcoin-babe.com, or you can check me out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Bitcoin Babe.
Excellent. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again, Michaela. Good luck with everything going forward. I really appreciate your time. And guys, I hope you've enjoyed that show. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye for now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.